Hello, welcome back. My name is Ari and today I am talking about my Orilium Magical Readathon TBR. So this is a bonus video. The TBR game was the last video. If that is what you were looking for, I will link it down in the description box below. But because the Orilium Magical Readathon is this month and I always pick careers or callings, I guess is what they're called, with a lot of prompts. This has its own separate video. If you watched my TBR game yesterday, you'll see a little bit of crossover in here, but there will be new books on here. So I'm not going to go really into my character background because I'm sure none of you care about that. But the calling that I chose is that of an alchemist. And it requires a lot of classes. There are 14 total possible classes, and 10 of them I need for my career. I'm gonna go ahead and try to read all 14 just in case I decide to change my career in the fall. I want to make sure I have all these classes completed so I can do whatever I want. But the plan is to go Alchemist, and my priorities are the first 10 books, but we'll cover all of the prompts. So the first class that I need to take is Elemental Studies, and the prompt for that is a book under 100 pages. And that's surprisingly harder than I thought it was. I don't have anything on my physical shelves that's under 100 pages. So what I decided to do for this is look at the audiobooks I have and if the audiobook equivalent is under 100 pages. And one of them that I need to read for Goodreads choice is The Hill We Climb by Amanda Gorman, and that was the inaugural poem. So that is what I am going to read for this. I'm going to listen to it as an audiobook, but it is 100 pages if it was written out. The next prompt is Animal Studies, and for that I need to read a quick read. This one I don't really have a book for. The problem with this is there's a difference between a quick read and a short read. And sometimes, like I had this problem last week where I had a 200-page book and I had barely gotten 100 pages in like 3 days later. It was so boring, it was not quick. And then I read a 420-page book in one day. So the 420-page book was the quick read, even though the 200-page book should have been the quick read, right? I have two short books that I want to read this month. So I've got The Warrior of Altai by Robert Jordan and The Psychopath Test by John Ronson. Both of these I am going to read this month for a different project, and I'm hoping one of these will be quick. If neither one of them is quick, then I'll just grab a graphic novel because I can guarantee that would be quick, but I don't have any plans to read graphic novels this month. So I haven't specifically put a book in here because I don't know if the books that I want to read for this are actually going to work. Make sense? Hopefully. The next class I have is Astronomy, and the prompt for that is a book that's on the top of my TBR, which I take to mean is the book on my TBR that I want to read most and maybe don't have an excuse to read. And for that one, I am going to read The Book of Cold Cases by Simone St. James. It did come up in my Dungeon of Books TBR, but I had already put this in this spot before it showed up on Dungeon of Books. So I'm not reading this because it was on Dungeon of Books, it just happened to work out well that way. But this is a thriller with ghost, and it's a new release, and I'm super excited. My next class is Alchemy, and the prompt for that is a book that features a romance. It doesn't necessarily have to be a romance book, but it has to have a romance in it. For that, I am reading a classic, and it is The Awakening by Kate Chopin. This is on my 5-star predictions, and I am 99% sure it's about a married couple, which would mean there's a romance involved. So that's all I got. The next class is Inscription, and the prompt for that is an intimidating read. And honestly, I am not usually very intimidated by books, but we're gonna make this work. And for that, I am reading Fevered Star by Rebecca Roanhorse. I'm considering this an intimidating read because the first book of the series, Black Sun, I read right around the time it came out, and I read it as an audiobook. And I remember being like, that was fine. I didn't really care about it, and I didn't find anything like good or bad in the book. And then everybody started talking about it, and everybody just adores and loved this book. And I'm like, am I missing something here? So I am going to reread Black Sun and then physically read Fevered Star next month, and hoping that I just missed something because I was reading an audiobook. But I'm intimidated by this because I'm not even sure I gave a shit about the first book, and I need to read the second in an epic fantasy series. So a little intimidating, right? The next class is Artificiary, and for this we need to read a book set on Earth. So that would be harder if I was trying to do fantasy or sci-fi, but you could read any contemporary or historical or non-fiction, not any, but most, and they'll be set on Earth. So there's a lot of books for this. I am going to do a reread of a book that I really liked in college, which was A Little Stranger, or The Little Stranger by Sarah Waters. This is historical fiction with like ghostly aspects, but I think they're literary ghosts. It's been a long time since I've been in college, so I don't exactly remember the plot of this, but I remember liking it, so we're gonna reread this. The next class is Spells and Incantations, and the prompt for that is short story or poetry, or poem, I guess. So you could do a short story, a poem, or a short story collection, or a poetry collection. I am going to do what I am 99% sure is a poetry collection, but it's an arc that I have called Under Her Skin, and it's like multiple different authors. So I have to read this anyway because it's an arc, and it perfectly fits this prompt. So poetry, or maybe a mix of like short stories and poetry collection, is what I'm reading for this. And isn't that cover pretty? Next class is Restoration, and this is one of the harder prompts, and it's a book featuring healers. So I don't know about you guys, but it's harder to tell if a book is featuring healers until you read it, especially because the healers probably aren't going to be the main character and may not even be mentioned in reviews or whatever. So for this one, I'm hoping that I got this right, but I am going to be reading Dragons of Autumn Twilight, which is the first book in the Dragonlance Chronicles, but this features a cleric character, and if you've ever played D&D, clerics are healers, so I'm really hoping I'm really hoping that our cleric in here is a healer, but I think like the main character is a cleric, so cross our fingers on this one. I don't know what I'm going to do if this doesn't have a healer in it because I don't think I have a book that has a healer in it. So if you have recommendations for books with healers in it, I might find a nonfiction. I bet you I could find a nonfiction. That's what I'm gonna do. If that doesn't work for some reason, I will find a nonfiction book about medical stuff and read that. The next class that I need to take is Demonology, and for that I need a book with shadow in the title. Now if you watch my Dungeons & Books TBR, you will see that I had a rock, paper, scissors battle for which shadow book that I'm going to read, and The Beckoning Shadow by Catherine Blair won. This is like one of the older books on my TBR that I bought when I didn't have a physically owned TBR, and I was just trying to like get a pretty TBR shelf before it got way out of control. So I don't remember what this is about, but it's about to be off my TBR and read in my head. I think this is YA fantasy. And the last class that I'm required to take is Lore, and for this class I need to read a mythology-inspired book, and for that I am going to read A River Enchanted by Rebecca Ross. I don't know much about this book, but I do know that it is based on Celtic mythology, which is exactly the prompt. So I will read this. Now, the 4 classes I don't have to take, but the 4 classes I don't have to take, but I'm gonna do anyway because I'm an overachiever. The first one is The Art of Illusion, and for this you need to read a book with a trope you like in it. And for me personally, that's harder because I don't typically know the tropes going into it unless it's a trope that I don't like. Does that make sense? Like, if I hear about tropes of a book and it's a trope that I don't like, I'm like, oh, okay, I know to watch out for that and avoid this book. But if it's a trope I do like, I just like forget about it. So typically the trope that I say I like is unlikable female characters, but I don't really have anything that I am positive has that trope. It's a harder trope to apparently find, but what I'm going to do for this is Caraval by Stephanie Garber. The trope that I'm going for is women helping women, which is that a real trope? I don't know, but I'm gonna consider it a trope. But this is about a girl who is trying to save her sister. So sisterly love, I guess, might be the trope. Whatever, it's a trope that I like. Women supporting women in some way is a trope that I like in books and things that I like to see. There's a good chance that the main character in here is an unlikable female character, but I'm not positive about that. But I do know she is out to save her sister, which is good enough for me. The next class is Conjuration, and for this, the book needs to have a light source on the cover. Does that make sense? Like, something on the cover needs to be a source of light. And for that, I am going to read Killers of the Flower Moon by David Graham, and there is a sun right there. It's a sunset. It's a very pretty sunset, but that's definitely a source of light. So this little book is that prompt. That is nonfiction about the founding of the FBI and the Osage murders. The next class is Psionics Divination, and this you need to read a book set in the future. And you know what's set in the future? Dystopian fiction. I don't know why I like YA dystopian so much, but I do. So I'm going to continue the Fifth Wave trilogy and read The Infinite Sea, which is young adult dystopian fiction. Is it super generic as hell? You betcha. Do I love it anyway? Also, you betcha. So that's for that prompt. That was one of the more easy ones. And the final class is Shapeshifting, and for this class you need to read a book with a creature with claws on the cover, and for that I'm going to read Hunger of the Gods by John Gwynne. There is I don't remember, is it a dragon on the cover of this, or is this a wolf? I don't know. The things up here, I keep getting Shadow of the Gods and Hunger of the Gods confused, but I think this is like a wolf-like creature on here. Whatever it is, it definitely has claws. That's all I gotta say. Whatever the hell is on the cover of this book, it has claws. And this is one of my arcs this month, so I'm gonna read it regardless, so I might as well put it in for this prompt. Anyway, that is the whole TBR. That's everything. Let me know down in the comments below, are you participating in the Magical Readathon? If you are, what calling are you doing? If you're not participating in the Magical Readathon, but you want to comment anyway, say hi down in the comments. Leave me a cat emoji because there's a cat on my shirt. I will see you in the next video, which is going to be the final shelf of my Read My Shelf challenge for the month of March. Bye.